What if I told you the very thing you're trying to run from, the thing that broke you, embarrassed you, or left you in tears, that very pain might be the exact thing that God wants to use to push you to the next level? You see, there's a secret to turning pain into power, and Denzel Washington unlocked it. But he didn't do it with fame, fortune, or fancy friends. No, sir, he did it with struggle, tears, faith, and grit. And that's the truth most folks don't talk about. They see the movies, the red carpets, the standing ovations, but they don't see the nights he cried, the days he doubted, or the moments he wanted to quit. Now let me say this, pain ain't just a visitor, pain is a builder. Pain doesn't knock politely, it kicks the door in. And when it does, you've got two choices. Either you let it ruin you, or you let it refine you. Denzel chose the second, but before he became a household name, before the Oscars and speeches, he was just a young man with a dream and a whole lot of disappointment standing in the way. He didn't have a map, but he had a mission, and it was pain that carved out that path. You ever been misunderstood? You ever been laughed at for dreaming too big? Denzel was. There were roles he auditioned for and got told, "You're not right for this." Doors slammed in his face. Some folks even told him he didn't look like a star. And let me tell you something, rejection like that hits different. Especially when you're giving it everything you've got. But instead of letting it eat him alive, he used it as fuel. He used every no as a stepping stone toward the yes that changed his life. See, pain isn't just about what happens to you, it's about what you do with it. And Denzel didn't let pain define him, he let it educate him. Every time life knocked him down, he got up a little wiser. He said, "All right, that didn't work, but I learned something." That's how you turn pain into power. You don't just suffer through it, you study it, you let it teach you. You treat it like a classroom, not a courtroom. You ain't on trial, you're in training. And you know what separates the folks who grow from pain and the ones who get buried by it? One word, perspective. Denzel learned early that pain wasn't the enemy. It was a message, it was a wake-up call. It was saying, there's more in you, you just don't know it yet. And let me tell you something, most people quit right before the blessing. They go through pain, and instead of asking what it's building, they start complaining about what it's breaking. But if you shift your mindset, if you start seeing pain as preparation instead of punishment, you open the door to a whole new version of yourself. Denzel said in interviews that every time life humbled him, it reminded him to go deeper, to pray harder, work smarter, and trust more. You don't grow on the mountaintop, you grow in the valley. You grow when nobody sees you. You grow when the lights are off, and it's just you and your insecurities talking loud. That's when you find out who you really are. And Denzel? He found out he was a fighter, a learner, a builder, a builder. So let me ask you, what pain are you carrying right now that could actually be your passport to power? What rejection could be your redirection? What failure could be your formation? Because here's the real secret. Pain is not the end of the story, it's the beginning of your breakthrough. And Denzel Washington proved that, but not by avoiding pain, by facing it head on. And if you stick with me through the rest of this, I'm gonna break down exactly how he took that pain, turned it into wisdom, and used it to step into his greatness. Stay with me. You don't want to miss what's next. Pain is a professor, not a punishment. That's something most folks don't want to hear, but it's the truth. We've been taught to see pain as something to avoid, something to silence, something to numb, but not Denzel. He looked pain dead in the eye and said, "Teach me." Because he realized early on that every painful experience had a lesson tucked inside, waiting to be unwrapped. And when you treat pain like a teacher instead of a punishment, everything about your life begins to shift. See, the problem is too many people try to fast forward through the hard parts. They want the results without the resistance. But growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. It happens when you're stretched, when you're uncomfortable, when life hits you with something you didn't see coming. And Denzel, he embraced that process. He didn't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" He asked, "What am I supposed to learn from this?" When Denzel was coming up in the industry, nothing was handed to him. There were days he didn't know where the next opportunity would come from. But he never let those dry seasons turn him bitter. He let them make him better. That's because he understood the classroom he was sitting in. While other people were skipping class, avoiding the pain, avoiding the struggle, he was sitting in the front row, taking notes. Every setback taught him patience. Every disappointment taught him discipline. Every delay taught him direction. You know what real pain does. It pulls the mask off. It exposes who you really are. It shows you what's in you when life squeezes you. And for Denzel, pain revealed character. It forced him to develop the kind of internal strength you can't fake. That kind of strength ain't loud, it don't need applause, and it don't need validation. It's the quiet strength that shows up when you're exhausted but still chasing the dream. That's the kind of strength pain gives you if you're willing to learn. Now let me make this plain. Not all pain is meant to break you. Some pain is meant to build you. Think about working out. You don't grow stronger until you push your muscles past the point of comfort. It hurts, but that's how you grow. Same thing in life. Denzel had to endure the pain of rejection, criticism, even self-doubt. But he used every ounce of it to train his mind, focus his spirit, and sharpen his craft. And don't get it twisted. He wasn't perfect. There were moments when he questioned himself, but that's part of the process. The pain of self-doubt taught him to lean not on emotions but on principles, to show up even when he didn't feel like it, to deliver excellence even when no one was watching. That's what pain taught him, consistency over comfort. So let me ask you, what class are you skipping right now because it's too painful? What lesson are you avoiding because it doesn't feel good? You can't graduate to your next level without passing the test you're facing right now. And like Denzel, you've got to stop treating pain like a punishment and start treating it like your professor. Because the truth is, the most powerful people you know, they're not the ones who avoided pain. They're the ones who learned from it. And if you lean in, if you pay attention, that pain you're feeling could become your greatest credential. That's the real education. Let me tell you something about greatness. It don't show up with a spotlight, it shows up in the shadows. See, people love to celebrate the moment when the world finally claps for you. They love the trophies, the interviews, the lights. But what they don't realize is that everything worth having is built when nobody's watching. Denzel Washington didn't become who he is on the stage. He became who he is in the silence, in the stillness, in the struggle when nobody was checking for him. Preparation happens in the dark. That's the truth. And Denzel understood that better than most. He spent years honing his craft long before anybody knew his name. He read scripts that never made it to production. He memorized lines for roles he didn't get. He practiced, studied, rewrote, and refined. Because he knew that if he stayed ready, he wouldn't have to get ready when his moment came. See, most people want the reward without the rehearsal. They want the platform without the preparation. But you can't shortcut greatness. You can't microwave mastery. Denzel put in the work when it was boring, when it was lonely, when it felt like nobody cared. That's when champions are made. Let me give you this, your moment will come. Oh yes, it will. But the real question is, will you be ready? When the opportunity shows up, will you have done the work in the dark? Or will you be scrambling, trying to make up for the time you wasted wishing instead of working? Because here's the thing, when your name is called, it's too late to prepare. The only thing you can do in that moment is rise to the level of your training, and if you haven't trained, you'll choke. That's not a threat, that's just truth. Denzel was ready when the big roles came calling. Why? Because he'd been preparing like they were coming all along. He didn't wait for a paycheck to be excellent. He didn't wait for recognition to give 100%. He showed up in the small moments like they were the big ones. That's what separates a professional from an amateur, consistency in private. And let me tell you something else. The dark seasons in your life, the ones where you feel forgotten, those are divine. That's where the deep work happens. That's where you develop the kind of character that can carry the success when it finally comes. Because success without character is a curse. You've got to build the internal infrastructure before you can support the weight of your destiny. And that happens when nobody's looking. So many people quit in the dark. They say, and this ain't working, or nobody sees me. But that's not the time to quit, that's the time to dig in. Because if you can be faithful in obscurity, you'll be powerful in opportunity. Denzel knew that. And he stayed in the process, even when it didn't make sense, even when the payoff wasn't immediate. So what about you? Are you preparing like your moment is coming? Are you practicing like the world's going to hear your voice? Because if you stay in the shadows long enough, I promise you one day that spotlight's gonna swing your way. And when it does, you won't just survive the moment, you'll own it. Pain without purpose leads to panic. You ever been in a storm and didn't know why it was happening? That kind of confusion will mess with your mind. It'll make you doubt everything, your abilities, your vision, your value. But when you connect your pain to a purpose, everything changes. That's the difference between falling apart and pulling it together. And let me tell you something, faith is the key that makes that connection. Denzel understood this principle. You can't always explain the pain, but you can always anchor yourself in something stronger than the storm. That anchor for him was faith. Not just religious faith, but a deep inner belief that every obstacle was shaping him for something greater. A belief that the pain had a point. And when you move through life with that kind of belief, you don't crumble under pressure, you grow through it. You grow through it. Now let me be clear, faith isn't magic. It doesn't mean life gets easier. It means you get stronger. It means you stop looking at life like it's out to get you and start seeing it like it's working for you, even when it hurts, even when it's slow. Faith is what lets you say, this doesn't make sense right now, but I trust it's leading somewhere good. There were moments in Denzel's journey where he didn't know where the next opportunity would come from. Moments where the phone didn't ring, the doors didn't open, and the vision felt more like a fantasy than a future. But he didn't let the silence shake him. He used that time to go deeper, to reconnect with his calling, to remind himself of why he started. That's what faith does. It gives you the endurance to keep moving even when nothing around you looks like progress. You know what most people do when life gets hard? They retreat, they give up, they throw in the towel. Why? Because they're looking for proof instead of walking in belief. But here's the thing, sometimes faith is the only evidence you've got. Sometimes all you have is that small voice inside that says, don't quit, not yet. And if you listen to that voice, if you honor that whisper, it'll carry you through the hardest seasons of your life. Denzel didn't wait for confidence to start acting like a man of purpose. He led with faith. Faith that his work mattered. Faith that his pain had purpose. Faith that his gift would make room for him. And guess what? It did. But only because he was willing to walk forward before he saw the finish line. And don't miss this, faith is a daily decision. It's not just a feeling you get in church or when things are going well. It's the choice to believe when your bank account is low, when your energy is gone, when the applause stops and you're left with nothing but your grind and your God. That's when real faith shows up. Not when it's easy, but when it's essential. So let me ask you, what would happen if you stopped letting pain confuse you and started letting faith guide you? What would happen if you trusted that your struggle wasn't random? That it was required? That every tear, every letdown, every closed door was leading you to something bigger than you imagined? Because when you move with faith, you don't panic in the pain. You rise with purpose. And that's exactly what Denzel did. Not because he had all the answers, but because he had enough belief to take the next step, even in the dark. You ever notice how some people go through pain and come out bitter, while others come out better? Same struggle, different outcome. The difference, one of them took notes. One of them treated the pain like a classroom, while the other just tried to survive it. Denzel didn't just go through pain, he grew through it. And more importantly, he passed it on. Because he understood something deep. Legacy doesn't come from just living life. It comes from learning from it, then lifting others with what you learned. See, life will test you over and over again. But the test ain't just for you. It's for the people coming behind you. The wisdom you gain, the lessons you collect, the tools you build, that's not just for your own survival. It's so you can hand them off to the next person struggling like you were. Denzel used his pain to build wisdom, and then he made it his mission to share that wisdom with others. That's what legacy really is. It's not about money or awards. It's not about how many people recognize your face. It's about how many people are better because you showed up. It's about how many people can take your story and find strength in it. And that only happens when you stop hiding the hurt and start revealing the healing. You know why people connect to Denzel's story? Because he didn't pretend he had it all together. He shared the low points, the struggles, the sacrifices, and not in a dramatic way, but in a teaching way. He said, I've been through it, and here's what I learned. That's powerful, because when you show someone your scars and your success, you're giving them a map. You're saying, look, I made it through this, and you can. And here's what most people miss. You don't have to wait until you've got it all figured out to start building your legacy. You can start right where you are, with what you've already learned. There's someone who needs your story, your experience, your testimony. And maybe you're thinking, "Oh, but I'm still in the struggle." That's okay. You don't have to be at the finish line to inspire someone. You just need to be real. You need to be honest. You need to be willing to say, "I'm still climbing, but here's how I haven't let go." Denzel made a decision that his pain wouldn't end with him. He didn't just act in movies. He spoke into lives. He didn't just win awards. He poured into people. He used every lesson from the valley to give others a map to the mountain. That's legacy. That's power. So let me ask you, what are you doing with the pain you've been through? Are you burying it, or are you building with it? Are you learning from it? Are you letting it shape your message, your mission, your influence? Because one day someone's gonna need the exact lesson you learned the hard way. And when they find you, they're gonna be looking for wisdom, not perfection. You don't have to be famous to leave a legacy. You just have to be faithful. Faithful to the lesson, faithful to the people, faithful to the purpose behind your pain. Because when you choose to learn from life instead of just living through it, you turn scars into strength and stories into legacy. That's the real secret to turning pain into power. It's not about avoiding hurt, it's about using it, learning from it, sharing it. That's how you rise. And more importantly, that's how you raise others with you.